Hello and welcome to The Top Story, a podcast with the headlines of the day from our correspondents around the world. I'm Qi. Coming up in this edition, Chinese President Xi Jinping is in Vietnam during the first leg of his state visits to 3 Southeast Asian countries. Data shows China's foreign trade started steadily in the first quarter. An Israeli airstrike has hit the last fully functional hospital in Gaza City. We begin in Asia. Chinese President Xi Jinping has pledged to work with Vietnam to map out a new blueprint for the building of a community with a shared future. In a written statement upon arrival in Hanoi for a state visit, President Xi noted that this year marks the 75th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic ties, and the two countries have demonstrated the bright future of the socialist system. He expressed wishes for long-lasting friendship and prosperity in Vietnam. Dusita Salkal has more.
Chinese President Xi Jinping's state visit to Vietnam is his first overseas trip this year. President Xi's visit comes just as global trade tensions are heating up after the U.S. announced a new wave of tariffs on international imports. President Xi is scheduled to hold high-level talks with Vietnam's top leadership. On the agenda, strengthening ties and exploring new ways in which the two countries can work more closely together. Now, Vietnam found itself unexpectedly hit with a steep 46% tariff on exports to the U.S. China, ASEAN, and countries with which Vietnam has free trade deals are key players in this country's export-driven economy. President Xi Jinping's broader Southeast Asia trip is seen as a strategic move to further deepen all-round cooperation with countries that China regards as its neighbors. And as the world scrambles to make sense of a turbulent trade environment, President Xi's visit is intended to signal China's prioritization of regional relationships, to show the country's commitment to regional neighbors as together they navigate the complexities of the current economic climate.
That's Dusita Salkal in Vietnam. This is the first leg of President Xi Jinping's tour in Southeast Asia that will also take him to Malaysia and Cambodia. Ahead of his departure, the president urged the two countries to contribute more to peace, stability, development and prosperity in Asia and the world at large. In his signed article published in Vietnam's Nam Dan newspaper, the Chinese leader called for deepening strategic mutual trust, advancing socialist cause, continuing win-win cooperation, and delivering more benefit to people of the two countries. Meanwhile, Chinese newspaper The People's Daily carried a signed article of General Secretary Tou Lam of the Communist Party of Vietnam's Central Committee. The Vietnamese leader highlighted the history of friendship between the two countries and said closer economic and trade relations have brought tangible benefits to people from the two sides. In China, data shows the country's imports and exports of goods started steadily in the first quarter, with exports showing strong resilience. Official data shows foreign trade value rose 1.3% to over 10 trillion yuan or $1.4 trillion. Dai Kai-yi reports.
China's foreign trade is off to a steady start this year. According to data released by the General Administration of Customs on Monday, the country's total imports and exports of goods in the first quarter registered a 1.3% year-on-year increase in yuan-denominated terms. Its exports during the period rose 6.9% to 6.13 trillion yuan, or about $850.1 billion, while imports fell 6% to 4.17 trillion yuan.
Despite global headwinds like sluggish economic growth, rising protectionism, and ongoing geopolitical tensions, China's foreign trade has managed to grow steadily this year, and the overall quality of that growth is also improving.
At the press briefing, officials said China has been actively diversifying its trade markets and deepening cooperation across industrial and supply chains. These efforts not only support global development, but also boost China's own resilience. With strong domestic demand as a solid foundation, China aims to use the certainty it has to navigate external uncertainty. The spokesperson said rising trade tensions are casting a shadow over world economic growth. China's pledge to defend its interests and uphold fair trade. Despite external pressures, China says it remains committed to high-level opening up and will continue to pursue mutually beneficial cooperation with partners around the world.
That was Dai Kai on China's foreign trade. Turning to the trade tensions between the world's two largest economies. China says the U.S. tariff exemptions on consumer electronic devices, semiconductors and circuits is a small step from Washington to correct its erroneous practices. The Commerce Ministry is calling on the U.S. to cancel tariffs and return to the path of resolving differences through mutual respect and equal dialogue. A ministry spokesperson says China is assessing the potential impact of the new U.S. decision. U.S. President Donald Trump said smartphones and computers will be moving to a different tariff bucket. President Putin has more.
It's been almost 2 weeks since U.S. President Donald Trump declared Liberation Day on April 2nd, when reciprocal tariffs went into effect, targeting America's global trade partners. A linchpin of the Trump administration's economic policy, using tariffs to strong-arm companies to onshore production operations and revive manufacturing in the U.S. The fallout since has been unprecedented and far-reaching as U.S. markets plunged and bond market sell-offs ramped up. Trillions of dollars evaporating from the U.S. economy. As business leaders and analysts warned of economic devastation and increased risk of a recession, the Trump administration reversed course on tariffs Wednesday, announcing a much-reduced 10% global tariff for trading partners. The Trump administration excluded China, setting the stage for an escalation of tensions. In an about-face, the Trump administration published guidance Friday excluding smartphones, computers and other electronic goods, such as TV screens and semiconductor chips, from tariffs, notably including U.S. imports from China. The uncertainty over tariffs is not only creating concern for businesses, but also U.S. consumers.
I think you shouldn't separate. I think it should be all, an agreement as far as not just only electronics, and cell phones and things of that nature, but, how we talking about the foods. People have to eat.
Price of food right now is too high. Eggs is very expensive. What are the kids going to do for Easter?
Pretty scared, because right now the economy is, in a bad state and money is real tight on families. So I just kind of feel like the tariffs will make things a little worse for us, normal people.
On Sunday, the Chinese Commerce Ministry called the tariffs exemption on electronic goods a small step, issuing a statement saying, "We urge the U.S. to take a big step to correct its mistakes, completely cancel the wrong practice of reciprocal tariffs, and return to the right path of mutual respect." Meanwhile, however, U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick suggested Sunday that Trump's tariff exemption on electronic goods is temporary.
So what he's doing is he's saying they're exempt from the reciprocal tariffs, but they're included in the semiconductor tariffs, which are coming in probably a month or two. So these are coming soon.
Trump followed up with a social media post saying, "We are taking a look at semiconductors and the whole electronics supply chain in the upcoming national security tariff investigations." With the continued uncertainty over tariffs, the short-term impact will be ongoing depressed market values and chaotic stock swings on Wall Street. And in the medium term, higher prices for U.S. consumers.
That was President Putin reporting from Washington. In the Middle East, an Israeli airstrike has hit the last fully functional hospital in Gaza City, destroying intensive care and surgery departments. Health officials at the hospital evacuated patients after receiving a phone call shortly before the attack. Israel says the strike aimed to take out Hamas fighters at the facility. Rami Amagari has more from near the ruins of the bombed hospital.
The remnant of what has been destroyed here at the Baptist Hospital or Al-Ma'madani Hospital in heart of Gaza City. This is out of an abrupt Israeli airstrike forcing 200 Palestinian patients and injured ones to leave immediately after an Israeli warning or warrant for the hospital that the hospital would be hit that minute or that time. 200 Palestinian patients and injured were forced to leave these buildings before they were knocked down by the Israeli airstrike.
International law, which was supposed to protect these institutions, has completely failed to deter or stop the Israeli occupation's attacks on hospitals. In truth, we are facing a health disaster in every sense of the word.
Some patients ended up on the street, while others remained inside the hospital, unable to escape. I couldn't run due to my medical condition. I honestly thought I was going to die that night.
There are still a significant number of patients here that need surgeries, little kids, women and children with open wounds, exposed bones, and they need a lot of work. Unfortunately, our ability to take care of these patients is significantly impaired.
According to health officials here at the hospital, a baby was pronounced dead shortly after he was evacuated, after they have taken the oxygen from him as he was taken or is being hospitalized at the intensive care unit. This is not the first time that this hospital is hit. In the early weeks of the Israeli war, the hospital was hit massively, leading to the death of almost 500 displaced Palestinians in the beginning of the war. And this is adding to the large amount of Palestinian hospitals in Gaza. Almost 34 hospitals, according to health officials, have been either completely or partially destroyed by Israeli airstrikes all over the war over the past 1 year and a half.
That was Rami Amagara in Gaza City. Elsewhere in Asia, former South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol has attended the first arguments in an insurrection case against him. It stems from his imposition of martial law in December. If convicted, Yoon could face life imprisonment or even the death penalty. Xinhan reports from outside the Seoul Central District Court.
It is the first formal hearing in his criminal trial. It comes 10 days after the Constitutional Court voted to rule in favor of upholding his impeachment. So he has since been stripped of his presidential powers and authority. So he now faces this criminal aspect of his actions back on December in a criminal sort of setting. And the one charge that he now faces, based on what prosecutors are introducing at the first hearing, is this charge of insurrection or rebellion. So under South Korean law, insurrection is defined as this refusal of obedience or order by an organized group with the purpose of overthrowing an established authority or government. And that's what prosecutors are alleging. Now, there could be additional counts added to the indictment there, counts like abuse of power. Now that Yoon has been stripped of his powers, he is now eligible to succumb to those sort of allegations like abuse of power. He could also be detained again if additional charges are made. So a lot could happen throughout the next several weeks and months as this trial. Yoon is entering the courthouse. He did so through an underground parking lot, which is different from other past presidents that faced criminal trials. So a nation awaits this court hearing. In the meantime, the presidential election is set for June 3rd here in South Korea.
That was Xinhan on the criminal case against former South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol following his removal from office. Finally, in Africa, as more Rwandan farmers adopt solar-powered irrigation, the country is seeking Chinese expertise to improve water use, boost crop yields and cut emissions. Environmental authorities say agriculture contributes 70% of Rwanda's greenhouse gas emissions. Chinese investors are exploring opportunities for developing grain irrigation and mechanized farming in the country. Athan Toshibia has more from Ramagana.
In a world where climate change is increasingly becoming unpredictable, farmers in Rwanda are turning to solar-powered irrigation. This method helps them to farm all year round. Jean Bosco Rutishisha, a retired police officer, is one of the 68 farmers in eastern Rwanda using this green irrigation. He says the technology has transformed his 6-hectare Ruhimbi farm, where he grows avocados and mangoes, for export.
On the farm here, we can do throughout, we can cultivate throughout the year, and we can have crops throughout the year. Whenever we want to plant, we can, because of the availability of water and the availability of energy that is environmental friendly. For example, you have seen the solar system that we have, which helps us to pump water uphill. So we dug that pond that you saw up down there, and also have solar panels which can provide like 4.5 kilowatts of power.
Jean Bosco Rutishisha uses 2 dam sheets on his farm. They hold 720 cubic meters of water, fully pumped using solar power. Most of the green irrigation equipment used here is imported from China. Jerome Hiteyezu, who is the head of irrigation at Rwanda Agriculture Board, says the method is efficient. He adds that Rwanda is working to attract investors to set up local production of solar-powered irrigation systems due to its positive impact on the environment.
Most of the time they are imported from China, they are imported from Europe, but most of them are imported from China and India. Yeah, we provide, you're right, we provide 75% of subsidy to cooperatives, individual farmers, and even a group of farmers. We subsidize.
Why do you do that?
We do that just to improve the technology in the country. We are at a starting point, because we intend to have 5,000 hectares irrigated in NST2.
A group of Chinese investors is currently in Rwanda to explore green irrigation and mechanized farming opportunities. One of them, Hu Xin from Nijang Agriculture Associates, says Rwanda's central location in Africa makes it ideal for regional supply.
The agricultural sector has introduced many investment opportunities in Rwanda, and through discussions with officials from Ministry of Agriculture, we believe that our agricultural machinery products can be covered by Rwanda to other East African countries, which is a very big market and investment opportunity.
Over 1,600 hectares of farmland in Rwanda use green irrigation. The government's target is to reach 5,000 hectares by 2029.
That was Athan Toshibia reporting. Now, recapping the headlines, Chinese President Xi Jinping has begun his state visit to Vietnam, the first leg of his Southeast Asian tour that will also take him to Malaysia and Cambodia. Data shows China's foreign trade started steadily in the first quarter, and an Israeli airstrike has hit the last fully functional hospital in Gaza City. And that's it for this edition of The Top Story, a podcast that brings you world headlines every weekday. For more news in politics, business, sports and culture, you can subscribe to the Beijing Hour, a 1-hour podcast news magazine program. We welcome and appreciate all ratings and reviews. I'm Xi Zhi. Thank you for listening.